Now, United States and Iran are meeting for negotiations in Oman, a last-ditch effort to avert conflict and address a long-running nuclear dispute. These negotiations come after days of military posturing, sanctions, and a series of sharp public threats. Now, the heart of today's negotiation is Iran's nuclear program, particularly its uranium enrichment activities. The U.S. also wants to include discussions on ballistic missiles, Iran's regional influence, and its support for allied non-state actors. Now, hours before the crucial talks, Tehran issued a broadside. Foreign Minister Abbas Araghchi set the tone, saying that the country enters diplomacy with open eyes and a steady memory of the past year. He added that Iran was engaging in good faith and stood firm on its rights. He further added that commitments needed to be honored. Araghchi also said that equal standing, mutual respect, and mutual interest are not rhetoric, but pillars of a durable agreement. In the lead-up to the talks, rhetoric on both sides has been intense. President Donald Trump has publicly emphasized that diplomacy is preferred, but has not ruled out military options if negotiations fail.
Diplomacy moving forward. The president has obviously been quite clear in his demands of the Iranian regime. Zero nuclear capability is something he's been very explicit about, and he wants to see if a deal can be struck. And while these negotiations are taking place, I would remind the Iranian regime that the president has many options at his disposal, aside from diplomacy, as the commander-in-chief of the most powerful military in the history of the world.
Iranian leaders have responded with stern warnings of retaliation should the U.S. resort to force. And in the latest, Iran has showcased advanced missile capabilities to underscore their defensive capabilities. Its long-range Khorram-Shahr 4 hypersonic ballistic missiles have been deployed for the first time in so-called underground missile cities. Reports say that out of 21 ballistic missile sites struck by Israel last June, 16 have been rebuilt, according to the Iranian officials, with repairs at the others continuing. Senior Iranian officials say missiles and launchers have already been prepared in anticipation of a potential surprise strike by the U.S. Reports are also indicating an increased military cooperation between Iran, Russia, and China, especially after the 12-day war in June. Reports citing Western intelligence assessments suggest that Iran has prioritized rebuilding its missile program, importing chemical precursors from China to produce solid fuel propellants. Reports say Iran has also been in discussion with China about purchasing the HQ-9B long-range air defense missile system. But there is no evidence that China has delivered these to Iran. And well, to discuss more, we're now being joined live on the broadcast by James J. Marlowe, foreign and defense analyst, West Asia analyst. And also, we're also being joined by James Jackson, a journalist and a political analyst. Of course, thank you so much for joining us on the broadcast. Now, let me just go to Mr. Marlowe. Now, Iran's foreign minister said Iran's entering this diplomacy with open eyes and a steady memory of the past year, clearly saying that we know what happened last time. So with the threat of a probable U.S. attack, which is looming, what are Iran's main goals in these negotiations?
To get the better of Donald Trump, I would say. As things stands right now, and this is my starting point, and I've been analyzing this situation for some time. As things stands right now, despite the fact that there is a huge American armada in the area, and of course, an even higher amount of American firepower, I don't think that Donald Trump, the president, the commander-in-chief, that's the word I was looking for, is going to make a strike on Iran unless he's forced into a corner. The reason why he's moved this huge armada into the area is a negotiating stance. He's a deal maker, and he believes that he wants all the collateral before he sits down at the table, or in this particular case, his man, Steve Witkoff, who sat down, as I understand it, about an hour and 20 minutes ago with the Iranian foreign minister. The reason why I think this is because the Israelis have told Donald Trump that if the objective is a regime change, then the only way you're going to do that is obviously boots on the ground. The Americans are certainly not going to commit to something like this. The Americans will be looking at taking out more IRGC military bases, certainly the ballistic missile bases, which have been rebuilt, as you correctly said in your report. And of course, looking for some type of overall stability within the Middle East. And as long as you have Iran there still supporting and training and arming its proxies, which it will go back to be doing that, make no mistake about that, then of course you've got a very fragile regime. And that's going to be very difficult to build on the Abraham Accords, which is what Donald Trump wants.
Right. Mr. Jackson, I'll come to you with the same point now. As Mr. Barlow just said, that Iran, of course, there's going to be talk happening. But what is U.S. trying to show here? Of course, he has the Armada, as our guest also said, Mr. Marlowe said. But considering the fact that these talks are taking place, and the last time it happened, there were attacks from Israel. What happens right now? How do you analyze these negotiations?
We have to see these negotiations as part of a longer strategic involvement in the Middle East by the United States. And actually, it's clear that their goal is to strengthen their position in the region, and that means strengthening the position of their proxy, Israel. Now, Israel is, of course, led by Benjamin Netanyahu, who has built his career and much of his domestic popularity in Israel by warning of the danger of Iran. It's a sort of this enemy, they perceived enemy, which, was a risk to Israelis. I think the 12-day war showed that actually Iran is not that much of a strategic threat to Israel's existence, but it is, of course, a threat to its security. Now, Donald Trump is a very erratic figure. It's hard to look and see what his decisions are going to be. If it's at some point he receives enough pressure from his allies in Israel or his allies in Saudi Arabia or the Gulf states to strike against Iran, I think that's possible, potentially even as a distraction. We've seen, Trump almost go to war over Greenland, which is strategically not particularly important for the United States. And there are people questioning, would he even strike Iran as just a show of strength to distract from the Epstein files, which his administration is, under file for his close connections with Jeffrey Epstein.
Right, and you mentioned allies. Let's talk about, China and Russia. We've just got this remark from China, which says that just before these talks took place, China said that it supports Iran defending its interest and opposes unilateral bullying. And we have reports also saying that weapons are coming in to Iran from Russia and China. How do you analyze this then?
I mean, we're in a strange position.
I was asking Mr. Jackson because he talked about allies. I would like to ask.
Yes. Sorry, with two Jameses on this show as well. I think we're in a strange position that China is actually one of the defenders of international law in the region and globally at this point. The US has moved so far away from the rules-based order that China is looking to many Europeans and also states in the Middle East as a more reliable partner, not just for trade and investment, which it has been building for the last decade, building alliances, but actually in terms of stability. I think, China is right to call this bullying because the US did attack Iran without any clearance from the UN Security Council. So I think it's right for China to be warning about possible American intervention.
All right. Mr. Marlowe, I'll come to you now. So as I mentioned, China and Russia as allies of Iran. So considering that, how confident is U.S. at this point of making, of ensuring that, there are topics they are talking about, uranium enrichment, and they also want to talk about ballistic missiles. What kind of mindset is U.S. going in these talks with?
And the treatment of the Iranian people, which is what Marco Rubio brought up yesterday and the day before as well. Now, this is something that the Iranians have said, though they're not going to talk about this. So that was the reason why these talks were originally off. Then they were back on again. I would imagine that they're going to be a load of delaying tactics on the part of the Iranians. So they'll be off, on, off, on. And they'll really be pushing Donald Trump into a corner to see how much patience he really has. Because, of course, some Americans, even in his own party, even on his own side, are saying, don't make the same fatal mistake that Barack Obama and also the next president, who has just escaped me right now because he's insignificant, which Donald Trump always talks about. But at the same time, Biden, of course, I'm speaking. But at the same time, the question is how far and how much push is Donald Trump going to accept before he gets angry? And he does get angry. And he will push the button for a strike on military bases. Now, what does this do for the Iranian people? Because, of course, on the one hand, that they want a regime change. There's more than 60% of the people actually want contacts with Israel and some type of an open border with Israel as such in terms of economic and intelligence sharing. You've got another 20% of people within Iran who are not particularly very interested in relations with Israel, but they certainly want a regime change. You've only got about 20% of the Iranian people today fully supporting this IRGC brutal regime that has been in power for 46, 47 years. And it will eventually fall. I'm not sure this is the right time it's going to fall because the people on the ground need to make that change. And at the same time, they don't have the arms unless they have people moving from the army, which there's no evidence of that happening whatsoever. But you are right to highlight Russia and China, who are very close with Iran. They are non-democratic governments, of course. They have very brutal leadership, and it's run by actually horrendous things really taking place, especially in China. China, of course, has still got those connections with North Korea. So we're looking at the alliance of Russia, China, Iran, and North Korea, which doesn't really fend very, very well with the democratic system of America and Europe and Israel, and also of the Arab Gulf states. And if I may just add finally on this point, and that is that I think that Donald Trump is actually being influenced by his friends and close associates in Saudi and, of course, in Qatar, which have said to him that they do not wish to see any type of a strike on Iran at this point. They think that it's going to destabilize the area. And I was thinking about this, how it's going to destabilize it, because you just got America against Iran and Iran will hit back at America. But at the same time, of course, as we know, they're also going to hit Israel, which is definitely going to take place. And the Israelis are making precautions for this. The Iranians will probably also go for around 30,000 American troops in Qatar. You may also see Hezbollah open up a front because they're still there. They've been badly hit, but they're open up a front against Israel. So that will destabilize the region for a period of time, like we've seen in the last couple of years. But the end objective is a regime change. And you've always got to be focused on the purpose of what's taking place.
All right, I will take your point and I'll go to Mr. Jackson now. Regime change, one of the things that Mr. Mallow has pointed out. Mr. Jackson, so considering the fact that, Iran still right now is repairing its nuclear sites, we know about that. We also mentioned the regional aspect. Egypt has now, of course, they're meeting with IAEA, talking over these escalating tensions between, in the nuclear program. How do you analyze Iran's goal right now, while they're also focusing on talks, but they're on the other bag, they're also repairing or working on their nuclear sites?
Well, there's the saying, speak softly but carry a big stick in defense. So Iran has been shown that they need to be capable of defending themselves if they want to protect from regime change. Ultimately, I think last summer's assault from Israel and the US was a sign that they need to be, for the regime, that they need to be continuing to develop their nuclear program so that they can defend themselves in case of American or Israeli or allied intervention. So ultimately, I don't believe that firing missiles at Iran makes the world or the region safer, nor does it help the Iranian people, sadly, because, it would be fantastic to see this regime be peacefully overthrown by the people. But, you know, we've seen US democratic, quote unquote, intervention in the Middle East, in many cases, particularly in Iraq and Afghanistan. You know, spent trillions in Afghanistan for the Taliban to be replaced by the Taliban. So I don't believe that the West should be interfering in the Middle East or anywhere else for that matter in this particular era. I really think that, you know, Israel is a very powerful regional state at the moment, and we've seen what horrific crimes it commits against its neighbors. So the idea that Israel is interested in regional stability, I find absurd, when actually they're clearly interested in regional dominance.
All right, well, of course, we'll have to wait and see how these talks come out, or is it similar to the ones that happened in April last year? But thank you so much, James Marlowe, for defense analyst, and James Jackson, a political analyst. Thank you to both of you for coming on the show.
Thanks for having me.